have a question for you. How fated can astrological predictions be? Why don't predictions always come true? Let's leave aside unprofessional predictions. This is not even up for debate. Is there absolute fatality in the sense of inevitability in our life? And is it possible to make predictions that will come true? It all depends on which pole the planets of your astral chart are realized. It depends on the level of full consciousness of the native. The energy of the planets in the dynamics, real or symbolic, must be discharged in any case because it condenses. And the direction of where it will go depends on our full awareness. There is the limbic zone, the moon, between the neocortex and the reptilian brain, representing precisely our states, feelings, emotions, which are the conductors, words, speech, information, actions. The processes of the external world are translated into certain sensations, and these sensations form a certain image of the unconscious that we read, which we scan. This happens all the time, perpetually. We may not know it, but it works. All our feelings and sensations are transferred into the language of symbols and vice versa. You had a dream last night, and in the morning you have an impression of this dream, an emotion, a pleasant or an annoying feeling. If you correctly decipher these sensations and these symbols, you will then correctly translate the information received into the language of the neocortex. According to the theory of Carl Jung, the reptilian brain embodies the archetype of the self, representing the wholeness and integrity of a person. It is this very unconscious, the higher self, the supreme spirit which can have its own objectives or goals. For example, the subconscious has decided to teach us how to survive, and it will place us in situations of crisis and tension. At the level of everyday life, these can be very complex and difficult manifestations at the level of events, but from the point of view of the subconscious, this will be the experience that we need. So the starting point for us is the idea that everything you do not control directly, and we call it destiny, space, event, all these phenomena are the projections of our unconscious. Fate or fated aspect of reality, the unconscious, the reptilian brain, the supreme self, God, the universe, providence, divine intervention. Here is the chain of projections that we arrive at. The predictive chart can never contradict the natal chart. For example, if you have in the natal chart a square Venus-Neptune, and in the predictions, at this moment you are living the transit of the opposition Neptune-Venus, and we remember that the square and the opposition are two totally opposite aspects according to their essences. So in any case, the square will have a priority for us. In other words, during this transit, the work on the square will be useless because the transit opposition will minimize or cancel all our efforts. By following these rules and many more, you will see that the astrological predictions will reveal themselves on a different level. Perhaps you do not have a direct indication of a marriage event at the moment. On the other hand, we can look at the reasons why this kind of event is not going to happen now. Or we can look at the things to be done in order to accelerate this kind of event. Or we can look at the ways to replay this trend. The trend of the absence of the marriage configurations. After all, maybe instead of trying to get married at all costs, we should prioritize our career and social achievements. No transit will tell you that you shouldn't do anything at all. A trend needs anchoring. It needs to cling to something, to pour out its energy. A trend needs anchoring in the form of our reaction to it. How we are going to fill in this event. We have a crisis at work. The trend of changing a job has been set. How are we going to behave? What are we going to do? Are we going to try to keep the job at all costs until the trend destroys the situation? Or are we going to resign that will allow us to find a much better option? It means that the trend of changing a job will manifest itself with or without our conscious participation. The anchor can be in the form of a certain process or event or symbolic action, but the energy of the trend will always be present and will always flow somewhere, go somewhere. How the scenario of the trend will be played out depends on the level of consciousness of the native, full consciousness. A trend needs anchoring, and we have the possibility to anchor them, that is, to manage them. If we play trends correctly, we can set new trends, correct the existing trends. This can be compared to the flow of a river. If you swim against the flow of the river, this can be done during a certain period of time. But at some point, your strength will weaken and the current will carry you away with its flow. This especially applies to the trends of the slow planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. They create very turbulent, powerful currents. We can try to go against them, but the trend will continue to orient us in the direction it dictates. When a trend is in its peak phase, then the impact of the transit aspect is at its maximum. Then it's clear that it will be quite difficult to reverse the trend. If we are at the stage of the end of the trend, it will be almost impossible to reverse it because the flow of the new trend has been already formed. At the beginning of the trend, and these are the strongest correction points, the points of correction, we can set new parameters and play the trend in the plus. These general predictions say that, collective predictions say that for Leos, Saturn has entered their symbolic second house, which corresponds to the sign of Libra. Are all Leos supposed to have money problems, financial problems? Uranus has entered Taurus, the symbolic seventh house for Scorpios. Will all Scorpios experience the risk of divorce? These are symbolic houses and have nothing to do with the grid of the houses of your natal chart. Our goal, our objective is to adhere to the concept of neutrality of trends. There are no good or bad trends. Take the clock hands, a clock, a watch. What time is better, 2 p.m. or 6 a.m.? Each trend in its period has its own task. Right now, the time is suitable for strengthening the bonds in the marriage. And there will be another period when the time will be favorable, suitable for promoting the business. And a little bit later, there will be another period suitable for rest, for having rest, for relaxation. And after that, later, the time will be suitable for launching a newsletter. Uranus approaches the cusps of the 10th house, and you hear rumors that there will be a restructuring in the company, that you could be fired. But we see that Uranus does not reach the cusp of the midheaven of the 10th house. It is missing a few degrees, and just before to form the exact conjunction with the midheaven, it begins its retrograde phase and moves back to the 9th house. Will you be fired at this moment? No, not now. But we understand that you've had just a moment of respite. When Uranus returns back to the direct movement and crosses again the cusp of the 10th house, then an event of a dismissal will be possible, but not now. The trend has been set, but will not evolve and will not reach the peak phase. You can relax and take advantage of the moment of break. Certain types of events are taboo subjects, meaning that not all events in the native's life are easy to trace, that all events are not revealed to us by providence, the cosmos, the absolute. It is actually a philosophical question. How can we determine which event is open and which one is closed by the universe? In reality, everything is visible and traceable. The death of the native and the death of loved ones. And yes, it can be predicted. In ancient times, predictions were beginning with the analysis of life expectancy of the client, of the native, in order to find out how much time the person had in front of her. Financial problems is a very abstract expression. What kind of problems do you have exactly? Would you have more expenses or less income? You have $1,000 on your account. A malefic planet afflicts the ruler of the second house. Nothing will happen to this money on your account that you have already, but there will be a problem with the arrival of the new money. If a transiting malefic planet passes through the house too, then it will affect negatively your $1,000 that you have on your account. If Venus experiences dissonant transits, then it initiates a situation when you waste your money. This is your decision to waste your money. You make unsuccessful, not very advantageous purchases, wrong investments. These are such subtle distinctions that must be taken into account. Each method has its own direction, its own function. Therefore, you cannot look only at transits or only at the solar revolution or only at progressions. It makes no sense to look at each technique separately. You need to analyze the entire pyramid to make the synthesis of the 5 methods. So the primary or the symbolic directions. This is the hour hand on the dial of life. They describe the major events of the 1 to 3 year period. The secondary progression, another symbolic movement, symbolic technique, as well as the primary directions. The progressions correspond to the minute hand on the dial of life, and they describe the major events of the 12 months. The transits and the eclipses, the real movement of planets, not symbolic. They correspond to the second hand on the dial of life. They set new trends, give birth to opportunities. In addition to this, the eclipses provoke the reset of life scenarios. Please keep in mind that in order to be able to predict an event, we need to see it at all levels of the pyramid. Predictive aspects between social and slow planets are not considered on a psychological level. Neptune square Saturn. We do not give any psychological color to this aspect because me personally, in my system, I do not consider the position of the social and the trans-Saturnian planets in the signs of the zodiac in natal astrology. The person is in crisis or in depression. Is Saturn transiting through the house the reason of it? No, it is not. There are aspects in predictions that are very similar but do not have the same impact. Uranus squares the moon, causing depression, giving a feeling of loss, because Uranus is the planet of contemplation, of passivity, while Saturn in the first house will give a different effect. When everyone starts demanding, requiring something from me, all my miscalculations are visible, and this is an event. It is happening in reality. It is not a feeling of loneliness, which is psychological state.